si ou ta remè produit émission par sur radio ou bien sur télévision BCN, ou ta remè nous filmer service dimanche l'église ou, pas de problème. Juste relais dans 617 290 16 60. 617 290 16 60 pour plus d'informations. Et pas oublier, nous sur toutes plateformes tant que Roku, Facebook, Fire Stick, YouTube et nous sous chaîne 31.3 local. BCN, c'est télévision pour communauté caribéenne. BCN, Boston Caribbean Network Television, c'est première télévision communautaire et commerciale qui est là pour promouvoir valeurs culturelles, sociales et historiques pays d'Haïti. Une télévision qui l'a 24/24 pour voir toutes nouvelles nationales et internationales. D'ailleurs, si vous avez aimé produire émission par sur radio ou bien sur télévision BCN, ou avez aimé nous filmer service.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of Our Community, Our Voices. I'm your host, Michelle Etienne Campbell, here for another insightful show with another Boston City Councilor at large, a good friend of mine, Julia Mejia, who has done so much work on the Boston City Council so far. And we're here to learn a lot. She deals a lot with immigrant populations, with education, crime, and so we have a lot to discuss today. So without further ado, let's welcome Julia Mejia, who is here in the studio with us.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you're here with us.
I'm happy to be here with you. You know, it's always fun when we get together.
It's always great.
We are always doing good trouble.
Good things.
Good trouble together.
I'm going to tell the audience something. One of the times Julia comes to my church, Voice of the Gospel, and cries. And one of the times that she came to the service, you came and you spoke about how you started in this position, getting into politics, and what it meant to you as a young immigrant girl and having your parents. Could you just tell us that story? Because when I heard it in church, it made me cry. And I know it really impacted a lot of the young kids that were there that could really relate to your story.
Yeah, you know, it feels like every time I talk about the fact that I came to this country at 5 and I learned how to speak English. You know, I came here with a purpose, and that was to fight for my people. You know, my mom was undocumented for a period of time. So obviously, you know, for those folks who are dealing with issues of immigration, you know, it's hard on the family in terms of your employment and in terms of just getting your services. So I remember I was 9 years old, and I was at the welfare office. And I remember having to translate for my mother. And you know how it feels when somebody's being mean to you, with their tone and what they're saying. And I didn't want my mother to feel the way that I did. So I only translated what my mom needed to hear so that we can get the services that we needed. But when it was my turn to translate on behalf of my mother, I used that time to let the case manager know that she didn't need to treat us mean just because we were poor. And that was the first time that I used my voice. That was the first time that I stood up. And even though my mom didn't say it, I said it. I felt a sense of responsibility for my mother because I know we needed something, and I knew that the person that was standing in the way of us getting it didn't value us. And I knew that I had to do something.
And that must have felt empowering as well as a young individual.
It felt empowering, and it felt, you know what, it was one of those things that shaped my life. Because I was scared. And even though it was, you know, so long ago, I still remember that moment. It was such a defining moment in my life. And I have not stopped doing that since. Everywhere that I go, even when people don't want to hear it, I still say it.
Right.
And that is, that's just what I've always done. And any job that I've had, every job that I've had has been community centered, everything. Even when I worked in television, it was always programming that uplifted people.
Your testimony made such an impact on the young people at the church. I know a lot of the young kids were, you know, they were just really moved by the story and they could relate to it. And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, it's so apropos that you are on the Boston City Council, but also dealing with education. Tell us about some of the new things, initiatives that you're doing with the education department.
So, you know, I'm the first person in my family to graduate high school.
Wonderful.
So I grew up with a mom that never made it beyond the 3rd grade. And so education was my ticket out of poverty. Like, I know that for a fact. And because my mom did not speak English, I managed to drop out of high school and go back, and my mom never found out. Well, she knows now that I did that, but so because of my experience in the education space, a lot of the work that I've done in the city of Boston, like I started my own nonprofit organization to help educate parents about the role that they play in advocating for their children's education. I've done things in different languages so that people can understand that the education system is very different than our home education system, that education in America is very different, that you have rights, that you can speak up, that you can fight for your children. So that is the level of engagement that I walked into City Hall with, is more on the advocacy part of the work and fighting for equity and fighting for services and fighting for more mental health, you know, and social workers and guidance counselors. So I came in fighting into the Boston City Council, and a lot of the work that I've done on the Boston City Council has been based on my experience as a parent. I'm a BPS parent, I'm a BPS graduate, I'm a BPS advocate, I'm a BPS agitator. And in my role on the City Council, I'm the Vice Chair of Education. At my last term, I was the Chair of Education, so I still very much am engaged in the work. And what we've been seeing a lot now is, you know, with the influx of our new immigrant loved ones and migrants coming to this country, is that the city has been working really hard at creating and building infrastructure to support the students. Michelle, because you know this, based on the work that we were able to do together, is that BPS can't do it all. And, you know, when you go to school, the school is focusing on the academics piece, but there's a piece, the cultural piece, the trauma that the kids are coming to school with, leaving their homes, living in a shelter, not knowing the language. All of those things impact the way kids are learning. And so a lot of the work that I've done outside of the City Council, mainly with community groups, has really been about building infrastructure and supports for migrant students. And we could talk a little bit about the program that you designed, that our office supported, because I think that's what the city needs to learn more about and do more of. So you want to talk a little bit about that program?
So what we did is we started a program, particularly in the community that we're in as Haitian immigrants, and the church. We wanted to make sure that the students were able to be on par academically with the students, that they're coming into an environment where you know, they may not speak the same language, they may not learn things the same way, but we wanted to give them an opportunity to be able to learn the way that they can learn and then still be on par. One of the things that was so impactful with having you come, even just coming to the church and just hearing the stories and just being able to say to you as a Boston City Council person, these are your constituents, these are the needs, and for you to be able to say, you know, I can make the connections for these programs to happen, for us to be able to have an after school, a learning program where kids can do after school programs. We have people doing homework, making sure the kids have food, making sure that they have all the resources, picking them up and doing all that stuff. It was hugely impactful. And it's something that we pray that we are able to continue to do for years to come.
Oh, we're going to, because you were the model, right? So just so that everybody understands, I get super inspired by people who got a can-do attitude. And I went to the church several times. Some of it was just to worship. There were times when we went for the Christmas, the joy giving,
this program,
that program.
That was awesome as well.
That was great. But in those spaces is where you get to really see what the need is, right? And so working with you and Pastor Nick, creating, well, you all created it. All I did was leverage my network and developed, alongside you all, the platform. But I was really super inspired by your leadership in that space, because you saw what the need was, what the real gap was, because these are things that BPS can't do.
Right.
You all can do it because you understand the culture, you understand the climate, you understand the immediate needs, and you also had the location, the thought leadership. You had everything all in one place. So the young people were able to come and learn and have their own community. Even though they were from different schools, they were all able to at least learn together.
That's right.
And I think that that's what makes it so successful. And I think that BPS can learn from y'all, and you were the pilot, but doesn't necessarily mean that they can't keep it moving, right? Like,
sure.
It should replicate, and it should be something that...
It should replicate, and it's always great when BPS and other organizations and community leaders come together to empower community business community civic organizations and churches to be able to do the work, because the hands, you only have two hands, and you only have so much that you can do, and you've got to be able to leverage all of it together.
That's right. What I really loved about that approach is that everybody thinks that things begin and end with just government.
Yeah.
But actually the real work and the best solutions come from the people who are doing the work and or living the realities, right?
Absolutely.
So that is the type of leadership that I get really excited about, because y'all came to me with like, wouldn't it be great? I'm like, yes, it would be great. But I didn't know how, I didn't know who, I didn't know what, but all I knew was that it was such a great idea that I was going to leverage whatever I needed to do to make that happen.
And it was such a blessing, and it's wonderful to have people in government, city council people. This is what city council is for. City council is there to represent the people. You're here to speak and to advocate on behalf of the people, and to have people or a city council person such as yourself being able to do that is just, and we're dealing with Hispanic Heritage Month, but you're not just focused on Hispanics. You're focused on everybody in your
all
constituency.
Means all. Like, so
all
first
means
of all,
all.
everybody needs to know this. Like, I always say this everywhere you go. I might be light skinned, y'all, but I always tell my family I'm the darkest of them all, because I know, right?
Yeah, right.
And I know this to be true, is that when they stole us, right, when they abducted us, the only difference was the port that they dropped us off
That's
at.
right.
That's it, right? So I understand where my cultural roots come from, and I also know that we share the island of Quisqueya, right? So as a Dominican, I understand my responsibility. I understand the role and the voice that I have in educating my people around colorism, around racism, around classism. Like, I am not one of those folks that says not here, because I know it exists here.
It exists here.
Right? And so, one of the things, I think it was in 2010, when the Haitians had the earthquake. Was it
the earthquake?
I can't remember. 2010, right? So I organized around that, right? I wasn't even thinking about being an elected. I just knew right and wrong, right? And then there was a series of other things. And I've always been on the right side of the Haitian community as a light-skinned Dominican, understanding my Black roots, right? And I think that that level of partnership and sisterhood is what we need more of, because we are one island.
That's right.
And when we show up in ways that is divided, everybody suffers from it, right? So I utilize my platform to uplift, right? And I think that politically, sometimes people say, why you gotta say you're an Afro-Latina? Why can't you just be Latina? I said, because I claim my Black roots, and I do so with a lot of pride, right? And I think that things get lost in translation, and I think that why I work the way that I do, and my hashtag is all means all, because it's all of us. I'm not just the city councilor for Latinos just because I happen to be an Afro-Latina. No, I understand who I am, where I come from, and I also know that people who are low income, people who live in Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan, East Boston, like low income communities, Black and brown people, we have been disregarded and neglected. And so my job on the council, at least the way that I see myself, is like I'm the little Chihuahua. I'm always like barking and fighting and advocating to make sure that all of my people, right? And when I say my people, I mean all of us are moving up. And so a lot of the work is around workforce development, education. And then we've been seeing a lot of things around violence. So I pay attention to everything. I'm a city councilor that is active. You come to me with a problem, I have 500 solutions for it, because that's what these times require.
That's what these times require. We were talking before the show started about a new project that you're working on, that you're excited about.
Yes.
And you got me excited about it, and I'm going to be helping you with it.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about this back to school check-in or back to school check-in that you're going to be working on.
Like, I'm one of those people that everything that I do is based on what I have been through. So I was that kid, right, that every school year I didn't have the best sneakers. I didn't have the best clothes. And because I didn't have the best clothes, I always had to work really hard at making sure that I was not going to get teased, right? And I was also that kid that had to stand in line to get the welfare cheese, you know, the donations, and then everybody knew I was poor. And then I would go to the bodega with the food stamps that were paper, so everybody knew that we were poor. And there's a lot of stigma around poverty.
Right.
And so we're doing an event to make sure that young people can shop with dignity. And so we're doing a clothes drive between now and mid-October, where we're collecting gently used and or new items. And we have 5 different locations. I'll share that with you, but you could drop it off at City Hall, you could drop it off at our district office. We have a few hair salons and barbershops that are participating. We have drop-off locations all across the city. Well, what we're gonna do is we're partnering up with like a store that does consignment, and we're going to treat and refurbish all the items, dry clean them, get them prepped, and then we're going to create a boutique where families, youth and their families can come in and shop and they don't have to pay for it because it's complimentary, but they'll be able to shop with dignity, and they can walk out of there with an outfit or something that they can wear to school. And you might think that that's not a big deal, but
it's huge.
But for your self-esteem, for the bullying situation, it creates a sense of like you get to pick what you want. It's not like you're not going to be digging through a bin. Like everything's going to be set up like a store. So you really get to go through that experience. That's the vision that we have. And then we have that happening, but we also have, we're going to do workshops on all the things that you need to do to advocate for your child, navigating special education, EL learners, mental health and wellness. We're going to have resource tables, lawyers, so that it's a one-stop shop of everything you need to know so that your child can do well in school. And then we're also going to be providing panel discussions on different issues that are impacting the school community. So,
wonderful.
And you're going to be a part of it.
I'm going to be part of it. And if we have some of our listeners who are interested in finding out more about this particular program, it'll be on your website?
Yes.
Where they can call, where can they drop off some things? Give us some information.
Because we had to change the date of the actual event from September the 20th. We're looking at October the 28th. It's going to be at the Bruce Boland Building in Roxbury. We know that for a fact. And tentatively is October the 28th from 4 to 7.
But if they want to drop off clothing?
If they want to drop off clothing, then they can find me right now on Instagram, Julia for Boston, or they can email my office at julia.mejia@boston.gov, and they can send us an email, and we'll pick up clothes.
Oh, great.
We'll pick it up. You don't have to drop it off. We'll pick it up.
Give that address, the email address one more time.
The email address is Julia, JULIA.MEJIA@boston.gov. If you have gently used clothes, we'll pick it up at your house. We'll give you the locations if you're nearby. But the goal really is that we want everyone to feel like they have the power to give. Because that's the other thing, right? Is that usually people who are donating are from like Newton and more affluent areas. And we want to do something where young people can be the ones that are donating clothes, right? High school students or college students that no longer are wearing the same thing. They can give it to somebody, because we want to create a culture of giving, that everybody has the power to give. You don't have to be rich to make a donation, right? Like it's about creating community, and it's about us understanding that we have to support each other. And even if it's just a pair of sneakers, it's something, and everybody feels good. The goal is that everybody wins.
I had a spiritual leader, a spiritual father of mine many years ago who said to me, he said, Michelle, you know what? You have things in your closet you have to give. Because at the end of the day, in order for you to receive something, your hands have to be open and you have to be giving in order for you to receive back. So that message is for everyone who is listening, that if you have gently used clothing or brand new things that maybe you've never worn or never used, somebody gave you something for Christmas and you didn't like it and it's just in the back of your closet, come on, just bring it, drop it off at these locations, send an email to the city councilor and they'll pick it up. They said they'll pick it up, make it easy for you so that we can share for somebody else. And that way it opens up a door for you to be blessed as well.
That's right.
So definitely give.
I love
and
that.
then you can receive again.
I love that. And I'm always paying attention to signs, like things that people say, because that is really impactful. Like it's about reciprocating, right? And it's about blessings, and that everybody's a blessing, right? And everybody can give. And I love this whole idea of like being poured back into.
Absolutely.
And so if you have something, we'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely. Today is voter registration day. And I want to say, you've been listening to this conversation with myself and Julia for the last maybe 15, 20 minutes. And it's been exciting, and you've heard all the things that Julia is doing in the community. But just so that you know the backstory, when Julia was running for office, how many votes got you into this position?
One
vote.
I won by one vote.
Which means
one, y'all.
Every vote counts. Today is voter registration day. You've got to go out and register to vote, because if it wasn't for that one vote, we wouldn't have this wonderful woman here. And we need more people who are advocating for our communities to be in the position. And so your vote counts each time. Today is voter registration. It's easy. Go online. Register to vote. I don't know, .gov.
And can I just say, this is our community, our voice.
Our community, our
voices. So your voice is your vote. Okay, and your vote is your voice.
That's right.
And the last day to register to vote is October the 26th. But today is the voter oh my Lord.
That's okay.
Oh, that's okay. It's National Voter Registration Day, y'all. Make sure you vote. And our office is launching a whole initiative over the next 3 weeks, a voter registration challenge. And we're going to see who can register the most people to vote.
Any gifts? Anything?
Yeah, we'll
brainstorm on some things.
That's right. But the whole idea is that, look, we have an election coming down the pipeline, and we know that the election is really important, and we need to make sure that our people are paying attention, because they're trying to get rid of us all. Just so you all know, regardless of who you're going to vote for, at the end of the day, I always say, even if you don't vote for
the person that we would vote for,
right? Just put your own name on the ballot. At the end of the day, we need to let people know that we are paying attention.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right. It's important for us to get involved. We've heard so much, and there's so much more. You've got to come back again. There's
Are you serious? I'm done. Are you kidding me?
There's so much more for us to talk about.
You can't.
But there's one more thing I want.
I'm not done yet. What the heck?
There's one more thing I do want to talk about.
Yeah.
We're talking about the importance of voter registration and voting.
Yeah.
And we know that there's been so much ugliness, nationally in terms of particular community groups. And the one thing that, us being together on this panel right now is important, because it shows that we really are all in it together.
That's right.
And when disparaging things are said about one part of the community member, we all suffer.
That's right. And when we don't say something,
and we all
are part of the problem.
And we have to speak out.
That's right.
And say something, and say, if people are saying things that are not right, we've got to turn around and say, that's not the truth. Right. That's not right.
And could I just tell you, one of the best examples I have of that was, I think it was in March or February. I can't keep up. COVID just got me all mixed up with the days. Like 3 years have gone by. I feel like 20. But anyways, at some point, there was a lot of discussion around the first migrant shelter that was open in Roxbury. And I got a lot of phone calls from my constituents really upset about the fact that we were opening up a migrant shelter and everybody was, what about us? And, you know, as a citywide councilor, my posture was not one that I thought, like a lot of people were happy about, because I said, well, what about us? I said, what we need to do is recognize who is the target here. People have come here, right? Just to get here and all the trauma that they've experienced. So when they get here, they're going to be met by our own people with so much hate and hostility. I said, imagine that being you. And imagine when it was you who needed shelter. So I was able to flip a few hearts and minds and helping people understand that we can't do to our own brothers and sisters what is being done on a national landscape, right? So I really try to make it more human and less political. And I think that that's what these times require, is for us to lead with heart, right? And with love and compassion. And I think the basic principles, you know, the basic laws of God,
Yep.
I think oftentimes get lost in these discussions because everything is so political.
Yep. Want to have one more segment with you.
Yeah.
But before we do, we're going to take a very brief break.
Okay.
And then we'll get back to talking about Julia. But when we get back, we're going to talk about youth employment and education programs of the
Perfect.
city as well.
Perfect.
Come back to
We're
us.
going to pay the bills, y'all. Across the city of Boston, primarily in places like the Seaport, Newbury Street, Faneuil Hall, we don't have a lot of presence of black and brown owned businesses, and we felt we had an opportunity to not just call that out, but to really, as a city, lean into that conversation, because you can't say that we're about economic empowerment and then shut out all of the different ways that people can actually be about that. So most recently, this past weekend, I got wind of an incident that happened in the Seaport venues in Boston, such as Society on High in the financial district, were recently issued a cease and desist letter on the grounds of optics negatively impacting the clientele of color, service providers of color, and its employees. In fact, over 50 employees were impacted as a result of this. And so
1660 pour plus d'informations. Et pas oublier, nous sur toutes plateformes yo, tant que Roku, Facebook, Firestick, YouTube et nous sous chaîne 31.3 local. BCN, c'est télévision pour communauté caribéenne. BCN, Boston Caribbean Network Television, c'est première télévision communautaire et commerciale qui est là pour promouvoir valeurs culturelles, sociales et historiques pays d'Haïti. Une télévision qui l'a 24 sur 24.
Welcome back. Again, we are here with Julia Mejia, who is our city councilor at large, representing the communities that you live in. And so we've had a wonderful discussion about what she's been doing, what is needed. And one of the other things that we'd like to talk about, this is the last segment, is to discuss the youth employment program that is happening with Boston youth. It's very important. We need to make sure that the young people have employment in order for them to be off the streets and to learn good, you know, wonderful things about how to be good citizens, civic duty, responsibility. And so tell us about the youth program that's happening.
So I got to go back to the fact that everything is based on my own learning.
Yep.
So I started working when I was 12. Yeah, I got a job at 12. And I've always had 2 to 3 jobs, so I'm a workaholic. I have no problem admitting that.
It's good stuff.
But I know that the work really shaped my ethics and also gave me a lot of skills, soft skills that nobody usually thinks that everybody's just the technical, but I think how your interpersonal communication, your emotional intelligence, showing up on time, your discipline, all of those things you learn through work that sometimes you don't learn at school, right? And so workforce development is a very important part of the puzzle when we're thinking about violence prevention. It's It's a violence prevention strategy, and it's also a strategy to help support families who are, living in poverty. And so the city has a workforce development initiative, and we have summer youth programs and stipends for year-round jobs as well. But what I'm really excited about, because I always like to create programs, is that we have partnered up with Health Resources in Action, which is a nonprofit organization, and we're working with another nonprofit organization to create a youth development career pathway, so that young people, once they graduate from high school, if they don't want to go to college and they don't want to go into a trade, there is a pathway towards the human service division, because young people who are out here, being sometimes disruptive, are the young people that we need to help be peer leaders.
Right.
And so this initiative is going to create a career pathway for young people to become youth development specialists, so that this is a very specific career track for 18 to 25-year-olds. And we're partnering up to make that happen with another nonprofit organization. And so those are the sort of things that really excite me when I think about youth development. And because I used to work in television, I always love to see the work that Dominic is doing around workforce development and giving career opportunities and access to young people. So I'm really excited to see Dominic really expand and hopefully develop the program so that we can develop the next generation of producers and hosts, right? Because we should be the ones producing our own content. And so that is another exciting opportunity that I think, as we're thinking about employment, that we need to start thinking outside the box. That it's not just putting young people at retail stores or putting young people in parks and recs, that we should create as many pathways for young people to explore multiple careers. And so I'm really excited about some of the work that we're doing on the council as it relates to workforce development and youth.
And it reminds me of when I was doing my master's program at UMass. I had written a grant. It was a study that we were doing, and that I did, particularly looking at Black and brown communities or poor communities, and seeing how young people actually have an entrepreneurial spirit.
That's right.
Listen, if you can sell drugs on the street, then you're pretty much an entrepreneur. It takes skills to do certain things.
Yeah.
And so out of that was birthed my nonprofit, the Project Teach, Mentor, and Inspire, where we teach teens and young people how to become entrepreneurs. And so I think these type of programs that you have, where you're teaching kids, it's not always about having to go to, not everybody is able or capable or has a time to go or wants to go to school to get a 4-year degree or whatever. It's great. Please, if you can do it, do it. Because it opens doors for you and for other people to do. But there are other opportunities that you can have. You can be your own boss. You can start a business. You can do these programs. And so, this is, I'm going to show you how it's done, people. We can partner to do programs where we're also teaching young people how to start their businesses.
You know what I really love about what you just said is that, if you could sell drugs, then you could do something. It's because what you're seeing is the potential in people, and what people see is the problem. And so that framework is exactly what I'm all about. In fact, back in the day when I did peer leadership programming, there were some kids around my way that I know they were selling weed, right? And so I started saying to them, listen, I'm gonna give you some condoms so you can pass out. I'm sorry, I don't know. But I said, every time you sell your little dime bag, you can pass out some condoms and you can help me keep your peers alive, because that's when HIV and AIDS was at its peak. And a lot of the people in my team thought I was crazy that I was engaging these drug dealers in my educational outreach engagement.
Out of the box thinking.
I said, just because they are doing something bad doesn't necessarily mean that they can't do something good. And it got to the point that they started knocking on my door and saying, Miss, you got any more condoms? They actually enjoyed and really understood the value of what they were doing, right? So I really love the way you're thinking about young people and helping them understand that there are so many different pathways and every child has potential.
Which is why it's in my heart. I want to take these at-risk young people and say, come, let's use all the things that you think you know, and let's fine tune it.
That's right.
And let's start doing some legitimate business
That's
opportunities for the community. And it builds community. It's
That's
economic
right.
for the community. It's
That's
a whole
right.
bunch of things for the community.
And they're
that we
doing the
can do.
marketing, because they can do it all. Actually, they can teach us a thing
Yeah,
or two,
oh,
right?
absolutely. I'm not that
They
technical.
can do it all. And then, you know, one of the things that I have learned in my time working with young people and also with, you know, just working in community is that we are resilient.
Absolutely.
We have been led to believe that we are vulnerable, but we're not. We're super strong because we have overcome so much. And so if we start focusing on our assets instead of our deficits, we change the way young people see themselves, right? And I think that is also part of the work that I've been doing on the council, is using language to ensure that we're not causing further harm by how we are defining ourselves.
Absolutely. We could be here forever.
Oh, I know, girl.
There is so much for us as a community to get involved in and to do. But the number one thing, if you listen to this and you've got a lot of different things, the number one thing I want you to remember is today is voter registration day. Please vote, be involved. Your voice is your vote, and your vote is your voice, like
right.
Julia just said. And you want to get involved and do all that you can to be an active part of your community, because your community needs you. And you need you, and your community needs you as well.
We need you.
So I want to thank you for another episode. Julia, thank you so much for coming. And we can do this. We got to do this again.
Okay.
We're going to do it again and again, because there's so much. Remember, one vote gave us Julia, and so it's important for you to vote and get and participate. Thank you again. I'm your host once more for Our Community, Our Voices, and we hope to see you again. Go out and vote and stay involved. Thank you.
Roku, Facebook, Firestick, YouTube et nous sous chaîne 31.3 local. BCN, c'est télévision pour communauté caribéenne.